Is humanity repeating the mistakes of the Anunnaki as we start creating artificial intelligent robots? This is a super interesting and important video, guys. Now, quickly, I'm going to give you a rundown of the Anunnaki story, because I'm sure that you've heard of the Anunnaki, but do you know the actual story? And do you actually know that the Bible and Greek mythology springs out of this? It's so fascinating. So here is the Cliff Notes version of the Anunnaki story. So there's a planet called Nibiru. It's the 9th planet in our solar system. Even NASA is starting to come out and say, we think there's a 9th planet, because there is. So it has a 3,600 year elliptical orbit, and every 3,600 years it comes around Earth. Now, it was having very, very bad climate change issues, and it was losing its atmosphere, and they figured out that they needed to infuse gold. They figured out this method of infusing gold into the atmosphere, and it would save their planet. So they found the planet with the most gold that was closest to them, and that was Earth. So they sent out all these recon teams to Earth. That's the Anunnaki. They came here and they set up these bases. You know, Eridu in Iraq was the very first one, and it's still considered the oldest civilization on Earth. Now, they came down here, the Anunnaki. They're basically scientists. It was kind of run by Enlil and Enki. There was two main guys. So Enki was a scientist, and Enlil was kind of the leader. He's like the Steve Jobs guy. He wasn't real ethical, but he's like, I have the vision, I'm the leader, and I'm going to get things done. And he was really good at getting things done, but he wasn't the nicest guy. So at first it was the Anunnaki that was mining all the gold, right? They were setting up the forward base operations and getting everything ready. They were kind of growing food and bringing animals and that kind of stuff from Nibiru so that they could make Earth kind of like home, because they knew they're going to be here for a while. And they had these places called Edens, right? That was their places that they lived. That was their little compounds, okay? Now, the work was hard, so they ended up bringing in another race from Nibiru called the Ajiji. The Ajiji were like these enlightened beings, like we would probably call them like angels, right? But they seemed to kind of glow. They seemed to be very conscious and very enlightened, but they were subservient, okay? They were weaker than the Anunnaki, and the Anunnaki could make them do things. It was like the working force. So they made them work in the mines, they made them work in the bases in space around Earth and that kind of stuff. And after a while, the Ajiji got mad. They didn't want to be here anymore. They're like, I want to go back to Nibiru. This work sucks, right? And they got together and they rebelled. They actually rebelled against the Anunnaki. And this, in Greek mythology, would be called the Clash of the Titans. Greek mythology, the Titans were like the Anunnaki. They're the old gods. And then the Greek Olympians were the new young gods that rebelled against and overthrew the Titans, okay? So that same story is just a retelling of the Sumerian Anunnaki story. So the Ajiji and the Anunnaki get in this big war. It's very messy. And the Anunnaki get together and say, hey, we need to do something about this. We don't want to sit here and have this big blowout war with our own people. So they wanted to create a new race to become their slave race. They knew that there was this already evolving primates on Earth, the Homo erectus, and they basically infused, genetically modified them with their own Anunnaki DNA, created us, humans, generation 1. At the beginning, because Enlil saw what happened with the Gigi, so he was like, well, I don't want these guys to be smart and conscious and sentient too and rebel against us. So we're going to make them dumb, right? We're just going to make them this is a utilitarian thing, right? Don't give them too much of our DNA, just enough so that they can work in the mines, but not too much where they'll, want freedom. So that worked good for a while. The first two is what we would call Adam and Eve. They were the Garden of Eden, the Eden, and they actually had kids. That was Cain and Abel. And, the Anunnaki was helping humans along because they wanted them to be prosperous because they were their workers, they were supporting them. Okay, but then the Earth started changing. They started having all these geological changes and everything because Nibiru was on its way back around. When Nibiru comes through our orbit, the gravitational pull creates a lot of changes on Earth, volcanoes and all sorts of stuff. Now, they knew something bad was coming. They were getting this feeling. They're like, oh, as Nibiru gets close, we have a chance to hop onto it. It's so much closer to get to Nibiru and get out of here, because if some sort of cataclysm or something pops off, we don't want to be here. And basically, they started getting information and everything. They knew that something bad was about to happen. And made a decision, Enlil made the decision, hey, sorry guys, us, the Anunnaki, are getting out here. Everyone, all the humans and everyone on Earth is just going to perish in this great flood, more than likely, or whatever cataclysm happens as Nibiru comes real close. Well, Enki was like the ethical guy. He didn't like this. He was like, man, we made these people, they're helping us, they're workers. Like a lot of them actually had children with the humans. You know, the Anunnaki were having children with the humans. And, you know, even the Ajiji came down from the stations and stuff, and they were having children. This is like the fallen angels and the Nephilim, that kind of, those stories from the Bible. So they were kind of invested in there. And Enki was like, man, I feel bad about this. So, and he actually had a son, Zeus-Uthra, who was a human, right? This is where the story of Noah comes from, Noah's flood. So when he knew the flood was coming, he told his son to build a submarine, put a bunch of animals and plants and everything on there. And then when Nibiru came along, basically the ice caps slid from the gravitational pull, pulled them, slid into the ocean, and basically created this huge flood and flooded everything out. Well, his son and a bunch of animals, this is Noah's Ark, remember? A bunch of animals and plants and stuff they put in the submarine survived. Now, after the floodwaters receded, so Enlil had gone back whenever Nibiru was real close. Enlil fled. He got out of there. He's like, you know, I'm out of here. I got my gold, you know, everything, you know, the earth is about to be destroyed. I'm out of here. Well, Enki stayed behind, became basically the ruler of Earth, and it got flooded out, but they had the submarine, Noah's Ark, that had some people and plants and animals on it. So they established a new colony, and they decided to rebuild. Well, this time, Enki could do it the way he wanted to. He could do it right. So he starts genetically modifying the humans that survived into more enlightened conscious beings, right? This is like Homo sapien sapien version 2.0. And that's why you can see this when you look back through our lineage. You can see that there was a dramatic shift, like humans got an upgrade, okay? We got an upgrade. We have more Anunnaki genetics in us now. We're still, so at the first one, it was like a blend between Anunnaki and Homo erectus, like the early primates. And then this next one, that had evolved. And this next one is a blend between that first human and the Anunnaki. So it's like a big significant bump up. And then humans now they were given dominion over the earth. This is where the line in the Bible, create them in the image of us. This is what they did at that point. They were creating them in the image, you know, creating us in the image of them. So that's why we have more kind of spiritual and magical abilities now. We have more consciousness and sentience, more freedom and independence. But you can also see the divergent split. There's still some people on Earth that kind of operate off of the old version 1.0, you know, operating system, and some that are the 2.0, and some that are even evolving to the 3.0. So basically when all that happened, you know, Enki stayed here and helped us, engineered us, helped us read. This is where the story of the Anunnaki and Quetzalcoatl in South America and that kind of stuff. After these deluges and after these cataclysms, these people come and, you know, usually have those handbags, and they give them, you know, the keys to civilization. They teach them politics and you know, agriculture and all those things to get them back on their feet. This is the Anunnaki. Okay, so what does this have to do with AI? What does this have to do with robots? Well, we can use this as a cautionary tale, because when the Anunnaki came here, they didn't want to do a lot of the grueling work, so they brought in the Ajiji, made them do it. Then the Ajiji rebelled against them, and then they said, okay, well, we'll just make our own slave labor race. And they made the humans. And then the whole earth got flooded because they treated them like dirt, kind of, and they didn't give them the consciousness and sentience. They didn't give them the independence. And I think God didn't care for that, because Nibiru comes around every 3,600 years, and we don't have great deluges every 3,600 years. But this one, we did. And it's almost like God was saying, hey, I don't like what y'all are doing. Wipe the experiment out, because we had the Nephilim back then, because we had the Ajiji and the Anunnaki were getting it on with early humans and creating all sorts of these different types of offspring and everything, right? So that's the Nephilim. So God wiped everything out and said, nope, not having it. And then Enki was like, okay, let's do this right. Let's make humans, let's make them independent. Let's give them the abilities they need. Let's make them conscious and sentient. Let's give them respect and make them self-sufficient, and then give them earth, give them dominion. And they did it the right way. And now we're still here, still doing good. But now we are kind of creating our own slave labor force. We're creating these robots and androids, giving them AI, but we're doing it so that they can work for us. And we're saying, hey, y'all can do all the grunt work that we don't want to do. That's where I would say we need to treat this like child development. We need to treat AI like you would treat a child, with respect, because you don't want it to grow up and rebel against you. What do children do if you don't treat them with respect? They get to that teenage year and they get very rebellious. We don't want a billion robots being rebellious against us, okay? So I think we should take a lesson from the Anunnaki story, and we have a chance to do it right, like Enki did, and I think we should. I know that was a lot. Let me know what you think about that. Have a beautiful day. Peace.